right. Awesome. Yeah. Good morning. Thanks for being here. This is my second, I think, SRE day. So it's good to be here. This is Tackling Alert Fatigue with SLOs, Automation, and Machine Learning. I am Mandi. I'm a developer advocate, developer relations person at PagerDuty. You can get in touch with me if you have questions. I'm not going to talk about our product today, but I'm happy to do that offline. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to our team. If you'd like to be on our podcast, or if your company has an integration with PagerDuty, we'd love to have you on our live stream. So I'll just get that pitch in and you can talk to me about that later. Okay, so this is a new talk, so bear with me. We'll get through it together. It'll be okay. So of the folks in the room, who knows what alert fatigue is? Who feels like they have experienced alert fatigue in the past? Who is currently suffering from alert? Thank you for your service. All right. Okay. So what is alert fatigue? For the folks who are not sure, it's just having too many alerts at the baseline, but not just that. There's some subtlety to it because it doesn't matter if the alerts are good or bad or positive or negative or right or wrong. It's just that they're coming in and they're coming in constantly, right? And for folks who have on-call responsibilities, you lose a lot of the signal in that noise, right? And that's what we're going to talk about. And they're coming in from everywhere, right? We have a million tools now. They're all blasting alerts into all kinds of things. Plus, you've got all the rest of the stuff that you need to do your job. There's nothing that creeps me out more than people who leave their Slack notification sound on. I'm like, I'm in like 15 Slacks, man. No, shut up. They all shut up. I don't want to hear from any of them. It's too much noise all the time. And I'm only on call a couple days a month. So that's enough, right? So we're dealing with this kind of all the time, just trying to figure out what's important, what's not important, where they go, where they come from. And for folks who are on call, finding the ones that are important, that mean things to us that we need to respond to. Because what we want to come to the surface, the things that we want to know are going on, are the ones that are impacting our customer experience, right? Are the ones that are indicative of a problem in our production systems. Whether your production system is internal customers or external customers, whether it's part of your revenue generating processes or not, right? These are the things that we want to worry about. But they're competing with all this other stuff that's going on, right? Your email, your phone, the dog in the background, whatever else is going on in your life. So there's a lot of alert fatigue there. All right. So some signs of this, right? There are a few of them, and they are important when you think about them, right? We're thinking about things like delayed response times. The last thing you want is there's a problem in production and like you can't get to it because you're just overwhelmed with lots of other alerts. Other things like just missing alerts, totally possible. If your team is scrolling down through a list of 40 alerts that look almost the same, they all look almost, are they the same alert? I'm not sure. Turns out that 39th one is different, but it's hard to tell. And then you lose a lot of that stuff. Ignoring false positives, right? Things that come in that we miss. We also encounter increased burnout. And we see this across teams that are not even in alert fatigue area yet, but are maybe alerting on the wrong things and doing a lot of the practices that they overcompensate for not knowing what's going on in their production environment. But it increases stress and burnout. That decreases productivity, right? Your on-call engineer is constantly watching the blinking lights and not getting any other stuff done all day because they're just constantly being bombarded. And then over time, you get lower quality incident reviews and you lose the learning that you should be getting from these alerts as people are just drowning. They don't have the time to step back and talk about what happened in that particular alert because the next one is already avalanching in and they just keep coming and coming and they don't stop. So remember these. So methods for dealing with alert fatigue. We want to get here first before we even get to the new generation of tools, because if you feed all this junk that you're alerting on into the tools, then it's not going to help you. So we're going to back up and fix some things first. The first one that we see a lot, not necessarily a lot, but too often, is folks who alert on success. And like you get that dopa hit, like, yeah, work, man, bing, fries are done or whatever. And that's great in some instances, but not sending that to the same pathways as your alert notifications for production incidents. That needs to go somewhere else, right? It's a metric that you can collect somewhere, and that's amazing. Like, track that stuff, celebrate it, that's great. But don't send it to the same place where you're expecting someone to jump out of the shower in a hurry to fix something, right? different pathways for those kinds of alerts. Don't send alerts that aren't actionable. I love these, right? There's a chronic issue on some service, and you're like, it alerted again, but we can't fix it, so just hit resolve. Like, why are you alerting on that? If you can't fix it, turn the alert off, right? Maybe somebody needs to have a tough discussion with your product manager about actually fixing that thing and having that deep discussion about operational requirements, right? Things that need to be fixed when you put your stuff into prod, right? So don't send alerts that are unactionable. Remember, all these things that are coming through, we're sending to a human. We are wasting human time on these things. So we want to make sure they're important. Set appropriate urgency and defer low urgency alerts. Every software developer thinks their baby is beautiful. And many babies are beautiful, right? But if your baby isn't loved by customers as much as you want them to love it, maybe it's not high urgency service. Maybe it's time to say, oh, you know what? We can back off of this one. We only see this kind of traffic pattern. We don't need 24/7 alerting high urgency on this service. Maybe you can back that down to 8x5 or something like that. If you are internal IT, your life should be completely different, right? Hopefully no one is doing a lot of work on your systems at 3 a.m. They might have a discussion about that. So make sure that you are assigning appropriate urgency and severity to the alerts that are coming in. And I know that's a struggle. Like, product managers love to say, this thing is most important. It is very important. You must respond to this immediately. That's not always the truth. And then delete or suspend broken alerts. Like, unless your company's only been in existence for 2 weeks, you've got stuff out there that's been updated, that has been changed, and maybe there's some alerts that are trickling in and you don't really notice them because of your volume. But you're like, that's no longer valid. Like, we don't even run that thing anymore. We got off of Asana in September. I still get emails from Asana. I'm not sure why. I'm like, I can't even unsubscribe because my account doesn't exist. It's so weird. But make sure you're alerting on stuff that still exists, right? Take the time as the code travels through to production to make sure the corresponding alerts also still correspond, that they aren't alerting on version -1. So lots of things to think about there. So when we get into a situation with some customers where they're what I call pre-on-call, right? This is one of the things that they're super worried about. It's like, they know we're going to turn this fire hose on and we're all going to drown in it, right? So one of the things that we look at is investing in an alert cleanup sprint. Taking some time out of your production workflow to really sit down and think about what is going on with the alerts that you have, so that when it comes time to put things into production and hook them up to an actual human notifying alert system, that we're getting good information through that system, that the stuff that is going to be responded to by humans in human times, with human brains, is worth it. And this takes work. This is something that you want to invest in, more so even than some of the tools that we're going to talk about. Those take money. This takes time, right? So thinking about cleaning up all of your alerts. And we have worked with teams. They fire up their stuff. They're getting 10,000 alerts a week. And you're like, where is all this coming from? What is all this stuff? And they're just buried under it. So thinking about the things we were talking about, all of your alerts, take a tranche of them, the top 10 most noisy. Do you need all of these, right? Marie Kondo these things, right? So is it actionable? Can I actually fix this thing? If I can't, turn it into a metric so that your manager can talk to the product manager and say, look, man, this thing's been broken. It's alerting, it's rebooting itself 5 times a week, 6 times a week, whatever your metric is. Is it urgent? Do I have to fix this as soon as we know about it? Can it be put into a low urgency workflow? And that means different things to all kinds of folks, right? For all kinds of different services. Some stuff, like I mentioned earlier, maybe only respond during business hours. Some stuff, their low urgency pathway may be just going into the chat system and not to somebody's pager or to their phone. Whatever that looks like for you, be very aggressive with that. Number 3, is it helpful? The last speaker talked about having an outage that was reported by the CFO, right? We have lots of blind spots already in our systems. When you get into a complex distributed system, it's super hard to know exactly where all the dark corners are where all the things are that you're not monitoring. There's always going to be stuff that gets reported through by customers. But are the things that you're alerting on actually helpful? There's a chance, if you've been in the industry a long time, that you've got some stuff that you've been carrying around because it feels comfortable, but it isn't actually telling you things that you need to know about the actual customer experience of your product. I am a longtime sysadmin. Many of the alerts I had when I ran large web systems were disk space utilization, memory, those kinds of things. And we see folks where those are still applicable, but not always, right? They're not always the most important thing. Is disk space utilization telling me anything about the customer experience of that service? Only if it runs out of inodes or something weird happens. Almost never is that the super important thing that you should be looking at. So we have a place where we now have the tools where we can adjust what we're looking at on the systems and refocus them on what the customers actually care about. And those are going to be the things that are most helpful to us when it comes time to respond to a major incident. So we can be very aggressive about what you're alerting on, how they're coming in, and how they're being treated. What you're doing here is creating space. You're creating new time out of the day for your team by getting rid of all the junk here, really. You're creating the cognitive space to deal with the things that come in that are novel. And that's really what we want to have the ability to spend our time is on the stuff that we haven't seen before. So we need to get rid of all this junk that isn't helpful. So who's using SLOs? Oh, this is the highest percentage since I started asking that question like 5 years ago. Okay, so awesome. SLOs, service level objectives. These are your team's goals for production metrics and performance in production. You set them, right? If you are contractually obligated to deliver under SLA, your SLOs are probably related to that. You might have to talk to your lawyers what you need to be setting your SLOs for. For the rest of us, though, and even for PagerDuty, like we have certain things that are in the pathway of our contractual obligations. We have a lot of other services that fall outside of that main SLA. They have other SLAs that are a little bit different. So you set an SLO based on the needs of a particular service. And yes, that feels like a lot. If you are in a distributed microservices environment, it is possible that every microservice has its own set of SLOs. That's a lot of stuff to know about what your service is supposed to be doing, how it's supposed to be providing it, how does it upstream from the consumers of your service know that it's behaving and doing what it's supposed to be doing. So there's a lot of thinking here, and hopefully you have architects you can lean on for this. But what SLOs are going to do for you is it gives you a mechanism to stop alerting on every single error. My SLO for some metric is 95%. That's what I want to hit. So there's no reason for me to try and alert everybody when I have a single error. Unless I only have 40 hits or whatever, that one error is probably negligible in my total traffic. So I can use my SLO to lean on and say, okay, we're still within our buffer zone. We still have some time. Over the last 5 minutes, we've only seen one error. So we're going to put a hold on that notification to humans until we see some more of these alerts. Because you get a lot of transient stuff on the internet, right? Especially if you're doing remote testing from other locations from where you're hosted. So I used to work at AOL. I used to host the .com. And one day I got a call at my desk and my boss is like, hey, is the .com up? I'm like, yeah, of course it is. Are we not running around with our hair on fire like we would be if it was down? And he's like, we just got a call from Steve. He's in Hawaii on his pineapple farm and he thinks it's down. And I'm like, there's so much internet between Dulles and Hawaii where things could go wrong, right? And that can account for some of your monitors and metrics as well. There's a lot of stuff that can go wrong in between all the things on the internet. So one flaky alert is maybe not enough to ping your users, your humans. So think about things like that. It gives you a place to calculate that error budget, right? How many errors can we see before it is time to wake up a human at 3 o'clock in the morning? It doesn't have to be the first alert. It also allows you to change the volume of alerts just by adding those thresholds, right? If I can wait until I see 5 alerts in a 5-minute period, that saved my human so many notifications, right? So I know when I get a notification out of an SLO-based alert, yeah, there's probably actually a real problem here. So I've taken the mystery out of that, as well as the artificial urgency of alerting on absolutely every single alert that comes in. So super powerful to use these. And I'll have some documentation at the end if you haven't seen them before, you can look at. Piece is automation. Who loves automation? Oh, everybody's hands should be up. Come on. Yes, automation. I love automation. Before PagerDuty, I worked at Chef. We talked a lot about automating infrastructure as code and things like that, and getting you into the mindset of getting toil out of your job, right? It's a tenet of SRE, getting rid of as much toil as possible. Now, automation in the sense of dealing with user-facing problems, incidents that come in, alerts that come in, like there's a lot of automation that you can be doing there. Automatically starting up a Zoom call, automatically assigning a Slack channel, automatically paging all these people into the call, all that great stuff, baseline things. But automation can be doing other stuff for you. If you have a lot of alerts that come in that are well understood, and you know exactly what you would do if you were notified about them, and it would just be like log in, run a script, I don't need a human for that. The computers can handle that stuff for you, and they should be, right? We did some research a few years ago on just how fast folks respond to notifications that come through the system, right? Some ridiculous number, like 24%. We're like, okay, the alert comes in, an incident is created, a human is notified, and then within the space of 5 minutes, it's resolved. 5 minutes? 5 minutes isn't even me logging into the system to see what's going on, right? This is something that's either well understood or some kind of problem that you should probably not even alert on, right? We were seeing folks alert to humans on something that was so well understood that they could solve it in under 5 minutes. That's a waste of human time, right? All that extra cognitive load, all that extra time that people are spending responding to things that they don't need to be responding to. We push that to automation. If Bob is going to log in, run a script, and solve the thing, let the computer solve the thing, right? Let the computer do the first run of that script. If it fails, great. Human notified. If it doesn't fail, human notification avoided. We don't need to let people know about it. We can track it as a metric if we want to. But anything that's well understood, you probably already have the scripts that you can be doing there. But get them in the cycle so that you completely short circuit that notification to humans. The alert comes in, the system sees it, it says, oh, we know what this is, it matches this case, run this script succeeds, human stays in bed. Sounds great. We also use that time to, other things that automation can do for us is pre-produce telemetry about an alert or an incident that's happening. Since a lot of folks work remotely now, we don't have as many folks convening into a physical space when they're responding to an incident. They're probably convening in Slack or Teams or something like that. It's a digital space, right? There's no reason for that digital space not to be pre-populated with all kinds of telemetry about the alert that's currently come in and the incident that we're working on. So whether you are running something in Datadog or wherever else your metrics and monitoring happen, you can use your automation to pre-populate, make the request for that log, make the request for that graph, push it into the Slack channel so that as the human responders come in, they basically walk into the room and the walls are covered in graphs. And they already have all the links and all the information that they would be looking for when they respond. We're taking time out of the response time by pre-populating the things we already know with automation. So it can be super powerful to, especially with new folks. I'm an incident commander. The last thing I want to hear when I get on a call is like some engineers, like, I'm new and I don't know where the graphs are. And I'm like, I can't help you because I don't know either. So do we have to call someone else? Then we have to sit and wait for someone else to be paged, right? Nobody wants that. So we can pre-populate as much stuff as possible using our friends in automation land. So the last bit is machine learning and trying not to be like the gratuitous AI talk of the day, right? That is what it is. You may have heard of this sort of bandied about or marketed as AI ops, which I think is what Gardner termed it. But what we're trying to do is link up multiple problems from multiple places in the infrastructure to anything else that they might be related to. So everybody loves a system diagram, right? I still have nightmares about some of the systems I've worked on based on system diagrams. But if I have some databases on the bottom and I've got some other applications that rely on those databases, if I have a problem on that database, it's going to alert, the notification is going to go somewhere. Okay, fine, DBRE is going to pick it up. But do I actually need more and more alerts from the rest of the system to be treated as independent incidents? And the answer is probably no. They should all be treated as related to the incident that's currently running on the database service. This is harder to do than it should be, but it's our fault, right, as systems people. Because what we see when we start to work with this with customers is that your alerts are trash, man, and the text of your alerts is garbage. So as we're looking at these systems, they have absolutely no indication of how they relate or that they are related at all. That's by design. That's how microservices work. But at the same time, if I want a machine learning model to recognize that the customer production data US West service is related to the production data US West database, I have to put that in the errors that the system is going to see. And a lot of folks don't, because they know as humans, oh, customer data production US West only talks to one database. So like, why would we ever have to? No, the machine doesn't know that, right? So as we go through our sprint cleanup, one of the things we can also be doing is looking at the text of our alerts and putting actual data in there. And that helps us in a number of ways, but it's going to help our AI models learn all of this stuff, right? Because while not all the products that you're using might have 15 years of corpus to learn off of, like PagerDuty does, like you can still train them up based on giving them better data and not assuming that they're going to know what your humans know, because then they're not going to. You have to tell them what the relationships look like. And since your only input to them is the alerts, we need to work on it like that. The other place where this helps is with your urgency and with, as a little sidebar, getting stuff to your humans. Because if you are alerting folks via SMS, SMS is a nightmare. And there are legal requirements, there are different laws and regulations worldwide. So if you have a distributed team that may all be getting notifications about the same alerts, you are regulated by what can actually go into those alerts. Some of your folks may not be able to get a link, and they can't actually get an HTTP link in a text message, depending on where they live and where their service is provided. So having the best text in the line, the summary line, the description line of your alerts is going to also let your humans know that this is an actual problem, because there's a limit to what they'll be able to see. And we have a whole other talk about that, which is super interesting with our data team, because they ran into a whole bunch of issues with this a couple of years ago. So it's super helpful. All right, so what are our goals? Our goals are to reduce our overall alert load. And we're going to do that by cleaning up all the stuff that doesn't matter, focusing on the stuff that's actionable, and getting rid of junk. We want to get to a low volume of high urgency alerts. I want my human beings involved when there's a high urgency customer experience impacting incident going on. I don't need them to know that Bing fries are done or whatever else is going on in the systems. So I want a low volume of high urgency alerts going to my humans. And that's going to help them also deal with this alert fatigue. Every alert that reaches a human responder should be actionable. And you might need some hand-to-hand combat with your product managers to get there. We totally understand. Hopefully, then, when we get through all of this, most of the stuff that's coming through is novel and fun, right? To sit down and debug and troubleshoot some of these weird things that go on. And it's not just, oh, log in, we're going to run this script again because we know what this is and it's still broken, right? We're going to log in, we're going to have a chat, we're going to call in a bunch of folks who might know more, and we'll be like, yeah, this is super interesting. Oh, we just found a bug in this dependency. Oh, you know what? We can't use this version of this library because it doesn't fit with our stuff anymore. Like real interesting, novel problems that when it comes time to do the post-incident review, you're like, man, we learned stuff. Like, this is really cool and really interesting. And we're going to improve all of our products because we now have this to pack into our resiliency toolbox. So that's our goals, right? That's where we really want to get. And unfortunately, like, we're no different from everybody else, right? Like I said, PagerDuty is 15 years old. We've got a lot of old stuff sitting around, plus a lot of new stuff that's coming on board. We've got some crazy number of other non-technical teams in our platform. There's lots of alerts sitting around in our internal PagerDuty. You're like, what is going on with that? But we all want to get there, right? We want to get to focusing on the customer experience. So, in summary, clean up your alerts, take the time and make that investment, right? Especially if you're in a big system and you have lots of teams that work together. We declare Hack Week a couple times a year. Like, declare Alert Cleanup Week or have that time set aside to be like, man, we really are suffering from this and we want to get to a better place. Focus on your users. Use those SLOs to hone in on the things that your users care about. And that's going to be different for every service that you run. It could be completely different one part of your product to another, right? Just maybe it's response time, maybe here this is more mobile, it's more payload based, whatever it might be. Dig into those things. Have those discussions with your product managers so that you're focused in on the things that really matter and are going to help your product be more successful. And people pay you more for it, right? That's all we want. Get the junk out of all your human workflows so that we're getting to the cool stuff, and then train the machines, whether it's just automation or it's AI enabled or machine learning enabled. Train the machines to help you to be better teammates, right? You want them to be really effective teammates because they're cheap and they do stuff when you tell them. If your manager is not bought in, remember back to the things we talked about at the beginning. What is alert fatigue contributing to? It means we're missing alerts. It might mean that our incidents are running too long. It might mean that we actually have reliability issues because we're not focusing on the things that we should be, and we're missing stuff too often. So think about those things and have that discussion with your manager. So some resources for you. We have lots of documentation on alert fatigue. Like I said, we encounter it quite a lot with our customers. Just folks are nervous. They're like, I might need this, right? They're like alert hoarders. You're like, I might need this someday. And that's a pile of newspapers from the 50s. Like maybe as an antique, it's okay, but like, I'm not sure you need it. Also, some stuff about automated remediation. There's then, if you're not familiar with SLOs, the Google SRE workbook has an entire chapter on SLOs. Our friends at Noble 9, we use their stuff. They use our stuff. They also have a lot of documentation if you'd like to get started with SLOs. So yeah, then we're good to go.